Shedeur Sanders entered the NFL draft expected to be a top pick, but after a shocking fall to the 5th round, he lost out on millions overnight. Then things got even crazier, because despite his tiny NFL contract, Shedeur's brand started making more money than some superstar players. And let's just say lots of people are unhappy about this. It has caused a huge problem in the NFL.
Shedeur Sanders' hands are not clean on this.
Let me break it all down for you. The slide seen round the world. The 2025 NFL Draft was supposed to be Shedeur Sanders' coronation. 2 college seasons of legitimate production, a Heisman-level brand, network cameras following him into every meeting. His name had been printed on every mock draft on the internet, and the conversation was never about whether he would go in the 1st round, only about how high he would land. But round 1 came, and his name was never called. Round 2 passed, round 3, round 4. By the time round 5 began, the entire football world had pivoted from analyzing his fit with various franchises to trying to make sense of what was happening on live television. By the time the Cleveland Browns finally ended his slide at pick 144, 6 other quarterbacks had already been selected. 6, including some names that casual fans had not even heard of in the lead-up to draft weekend. The Browns traded up with the Seattle Seahawks to grab him in the 5th round, making him the 2nd quarterback Cleveland had drafted in the same weekend, after taking Oregon's Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round. That detail by itself tells you something about how the league had come to view Shedeur, because the Browns had passed on him 6 separate times before they finally pulled the trigger. For Cleveland, the math worked out cleanly. They had not spent a high pick. They had not given up significant capital. They had simply waited until the perceived value of a once projected 1st-round talent had collapsed to a point where there was almost no risk on their end. If he develops, they have a steal. If he does not, they lose almost nothing. But for Shedeur, the implications of every passing round were enormous. NFL rookie contracts are strictly slotted by draft position. There is no negotiating leverage in the rookie pool. The exact moment your name is called is the exact moment your 4-year earnings are decided. So every team that passed on him was, in a very literal sense, deleting millions of guaranteed dollars from his career. That part is what made this slide so different from any other in recent memory. Players have fallen in the draft before. Aaron Rodgers famously sat in the green room until pick 24. Lamar Jackson dropped to the end of the 1st round. Even Jalen Hurts went in the 2nd despite a strong college career. But none of those slides came close to the magnitude of Shedeur's. None of them dropped a quarterback who had been pegged in the top 10 down to the 5th round. That is not a slide. That is a free fall. The reaction inside the football media world was sharp and immediate. Stephen A. Smith, who had spent the entire pre-draft cycle telling viewers Shedeur was being unfairly criticized, came on First Take Monday morning and unloaded.
There is no one, I repeat, no one, that looked at Shedeur Sanders and even had him less than the 3rd best quarterback in the draft.
That was the sentiment a lot of analysts shared. Whether you loved his game or had concerns about it, you were not going to find many serious draft evaluators who slotted him outside the top 3 quarterbacks in the class. He was widely considered a borderline 1st-round talent and an obvious top 3 quarterback in his class.
And 143 picks came and went before you heard his name. Don't talk to me about football.
Stephen A's point was that whatever explanation NFL teams were giving about pocket awareness, sack rate, or scheme fit, the real story had to be coming from somewhere off the field, because no honest evaluation of his actual play could justify a fall of that scale. And that is the question the rest of this story has to answer. Because what happened to Shedeur Sanders in those 143 picks was not random, and it was not strictly about football. It was about everything else attached to his name. The financial whiplash. To understand how brutal the slide really was, you have to look at what Shedeur Sanders was projected to make compared to what he ended up signing for. Because the gap is not just big, it is one of the most extreme financial reversals in modern professional sports. If Shedeur had been selected in the top 5 or top 10 of the 2025 draft as projected, he would have walked into a fully guaranteed 4-year rookie contract somewhere between $26 million and $48 million, depending on the slot. That is fully guaranteed money locked into the contract from day one, with a massive signing bonus paid out almost immediately. Top 10 quarterbacks routinely receive signing bonuses in the $15 million to $25 million range alone, with the rest of the contract paid out across the 4-year window. That was the path everyone assumed he was on right up until draft night. Instead, what he actually signed was a 4-year rookie deal worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $4.3 to $4.65 million total. Of that amount, only the signing bonus is guaranteed. and a fifth-round signing bonus typically lands in the range of $300,000 to $400,000. Everything else is contingent on him making the roster, sticking on the roster, and avoiding cuts in the years to come. Let that math sit for a second. The difference between top 5 money and 144th pick money for a quarterback in this draft is somewhere between $20 million and $40 million in lost guarantees. That is generational money. That is the kind of money that decides whether you ever have to take a contract you don't love down the line. But here is where the story gets bizarre, because during his time at Colorado, Shedeur Sanders was the poster child for the entire name, image, and likeness era. His NIL valuation was estimated at around $6.5 million per year while he was still a college quarterback, not over 4 years, per year. Read that one more time. His annual NIL income at Colorado was higher than the entire 4-year value of his rookie contract with the Cleveland Browns. There has never been a story like this in professional football. We have entered an era where college athletes can legitimately make more in a single year of NIL deals than they will earn from their first NFL contract. And Shedeur Sanders is the first quarterback in history where that gap is this glaring. The economics of college and pro football have officially flipped on their head, at least in his particular case. That dynamic alone changes how you have to read this entire situation, because in any previous era of football, a player slipping in the draft meant he was leaving real money on the table that he had no other way to earn back. Now, in the NIL era, a player like Shedeur is dealing with a different question entirely. The question is not whether he can survive the financial hit of being drafted lower. He absolutely can. His brand income alone makes the rookie contract close to irrelevant. The question is what playing in the NFL is actually worth to him as a financial decision, separate from the football decision. And that's the conversation that started circulating online almost immediately after his draft fall. The buzz on social media within hours of pick 144 was wild. Fans started asking the obvious thing. If your endorsement income is 6 or 7 times your NFL salary, why would you grind through 4 years of rookie deal football for less money than you were making in college? Why not stay in college longer, monetize the brand, and only come to the NFL on a veteran free agent deal where the slot system no longer applies? Those questions led directly into the bigger rumor that took over the internet in the weeks after the draft. The one about a so-called prime equity clause. The story claimed Shedeur and his team had negotiated some kind of unprecedented merchandise revenue share with the Browns, and that he was earning millions off jersey sales directly. The exact figure being thrown around was $14 million, made before he ever took a regular season snap. We will get into whether any of that is real later, but the reason that rumor took off in the first place is the financial whiplash we just walked through. Once the public realized how badly Shedeur had been hit financially by his draft slide, people were primed to believe almost anything about how he was making it back. The contrast was just too sharp to ignore. The most marketable college quarterback in the country, the first football athlete to sign a Nike deal in college, the face of Gatorade and Beats by Dre campaigns, suddenly drafted into a rookie contract that wouldn't cover what one of his Nike check deposits had been 6 months earlier. It did not compute. It still doesn't compute for a lot of fans. That gap between what the market said he was worth and what the NFL said he was worth is the part that turned this from a draft story into something much bigger, because it forced the entire football world to start asking how a player like Shedeur had been priced so far below his market value in the first place. And that question takes us straight into the off-field reasons NFL teams reportedly passed on him. Why the league sent a message. If you only looked at his college tape and his statistics, none of this would make sense. Across his last 2 seasons at Colorado, Shedeur threw for 7,364 yards, 64 touchdowns, and just 13 interceptions. His completion percentage was elite. His turnover numbers were among the cleanest in the country at the position. He was a poised pocket passer with NFL arm talent and the kind of rhythm-throwing skill set that traditionally translates well to the next level. So how does a quarterback with that profile end up at pick 144? The answer, according to NFL insiders and analysts who have spent their careers inside front offices, is everything but football. Stephen A. Smith laid it out plainly the morning after the draft.
I think the NFL sent the message. And the message that was sent was, you are not that guy.
That framing matters because it strips the football conversation out of the equation entirely. The argument from voices inside the league was that Shedeur's slide was not a referendum on his arm or his decision-making. It was a referendum on the package that came with him, and the package came with a lot of moving parts. The first concern that NFL executives reportedly raised in private was the on-field issue of sacks. Shedeur took a genuinely worrying number of sacks in his college career. In some games, he was sacked 7, 8, even 9 times. While a portion of that absolutely fell on the Colorado offensive line, NFL scouts started attributing more and more of those sacks to him. They argued he held the ball too long, that his pocket awareness was inconsistent, that he hunted for explosive plays when he should have been checking down. That part of his game gave teams legitimate hesitation about projecting him to the next level, where defensive lines move faster and windows close in fractions of a second. But that alone does not get a quarterback to the 5th round. Plenty of quarterbacks have left college with sack issues and still gotten drafted in the 1st round on the basis of arm talent and ceiling. Something else had to be happening, and according to multiple reports, that something else was the off-field component. Pre-draft, Shedeur reportedly had less than ideal interviews with several teams. The Giants were one franchise that came up repeatedly in those reports, with people inside the building suggesting head coach Brian Daboll was unimpressed with how he prepared. Whether that was fair or not, it became part of the league-wide conversation about him in the months leading into the draft.
I don't want to hear a damn thing about football. This ain't about football. This is about something else.
Stephen A's point ties directly into what a lot of people in the NFL were quietly saying. The off-field part of Shedeur's profile, the celebrity, the entourage, the cameras, the constant content production around him was making teams nervous. NFL front offices are deeply risk-averse organizations. They are not in the business of bringing in players who come with a media circus attached, especially in the quarterback room, especially as a backup or developmental piece. And then there was the Deion factor. Deion Sanders' commentary about which teams he wanted his sons to play for was reported on heavily before the draft. There were quotes circulating from interviews where Deion suggested he had preferences about which cities Shedeur would land in, and even floated the idea of his son not reporting to certain franchises.
Primetime Deion Sanders going out publicly and stating on the record, there's a couple of teams we might not want to win.
922 to 931. Primetime Deion Sanders going out publicly and stating on the record there's a couple of teams we might not want him. Stephen A's point was that even if those comments cooled closer to the draft, the perception had already taken root in NFL front offices. Drafting Shedeur Sanders was not just drafting a quarterback, it was reportedly drafting a relationship, a father who would always be in the picture, possibly publicly, a coaching father who had been linked to NFL coaching jobs himself, a brand built around the family name that operated like its own ecosystem. For a lot of franchises, that was a problem. Not because they had anything specific against Deion or Shedeur, but because they wanted complete organizational control over their quarterback room. They wanted the ability to develop a player without external commentary, and the perception, fair or not, was that Shedeur came as a package deal. Riddick made another point that mattered.
Because personal feelings come into this. I've been in enough draft meetings.
That is the part that does not get talked about enough. The idea that the draft is some clean, objective, statistical evaluation is a fantasy. Front offices are made up of people, and people make decisions based on personal reactions. Some scouts and executives had built up a real personal aversion to the entire Sanders ecosystem over the past 2 years. Some of that aversion was earned. Some of it was unfair, but all of it came due in late April when teams set their final boards. The Cleveland situation and the viral rumor. Shedeur Sanders did not just land in Cleveland. He landed in one of the most chaotic quarterback rooms in the entire NFL, and the way that situation unfolded over the course of the 2025 season set the stage for the viral rumor that would eventually take over the internet. When the Browns made the pick at 144, they already had a quarterback room that looked like a mess on paper. Deshaun Watson was sidelined with a serious Achilles injury and not expected to factor into the season in any meaningful way. Joe Flacco, the 40-year-old veteran, had been brought back to provide stability. Kenny Pickett, the former first-round disappointment, was on the roster, and Cleveland had also drafted Oregon's Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round 2 rounds before they grabbed Shedeur. So Shedeur walked into a room that already had 4 quarterbacks in it, where he was the lowest drafted of the rookies, behind a 40-year-old former Super Bowl winner, behind a former first-round pick, and behind another rookie who had been taken before him in the same draft. By every traditional NFL pecking order, he was the 4th or 5th option. That is the context you need to understand what happened next, because what unfolded in the first half of the 2025 season was almost a perfect dramatic setup for him. Joe Flacco started the year as the QB1. Within a few games, the offense was clearly struggling, and Cleveland made the move to bench him. They turned to Dillon Gabriel as the next option. Gabriel got his shot, but suffered an injury that took him out of the lineup. And just like that, the only healthy option left in the room with significant upside was Shedeur Sanders. He stepped in midway through the season and finished his rookie year with a 3-4 record as the starter. For a fifth-round rookie inheriting a broken offense, that was a perfectly respectable showing. He proved he could function at the NFL level. He proved he could read defenses well enough to win games. He proved that the league had probably gotten the value equation as wrong as Andrew Berry suggested it had on draft night. But here is where the financial side of the story exploded all over again. Because even as a backup at the start of the season, even before he ever took a regular season snap, Shedeur Sanders' jersey was outselling almost every other player's in the entire NFL. Data released by the NFLPA showed his jersey ranking as the fifth highest selling jersey in the NFL during that opening stretch of the season. Fifth out of every player in the league. He was outselling Patrick Mahomes, the multi-time Super Bowl champion. He was outselling Lamar Jackson, the reigning MVP. He was outselling established stars across every position as a fifth-round backup quarterback who had not played a regular season snap. That was the spark for the rumor. Within days of those jersey sales numbers becoming public, social media exploded with claims that Shedeur Sanders had negotiated something completely unprecedented into his rookie deal. The story claimed he and his team had inserted what was being called a prime equity clause into his contract. According to the rumor, this clause gave Shedeur a direct revenue share of every Browns jersey sold and a piece of broader team merchandise. The number being thrown around was staggering. According to the viral version of the story, Shedeur had already pulled in $14 million from this supposed equity clause before he had even taken a regular season snap. The story spread fast enough that several search engine AI summaries even briefly reported it as fact. It was on Instagram, it was on TikTok, it was on YouTube thumbnails everywhere. For a few weeks, it was the dominant Shedeur Sanders story online. People were genuinely believing that a fifth-round rookie had somehow gotten the Cleveland Browns to give him a percentage of merchandise revenue. The narrative was perfect. The college NIL star had figured out how to bend the NFL's rigid contract structure to his will. The kid who got snubbed in the draft had outsmarted the entire league financially. The Sanders family had once again beat the system. There was just one problem with the story. It was completely fake. NFL insider Ian Rappaport had to step in publicly in September 2025 to debunk the rumor outright. He called it absolutely fake. There was no prime equity clause. There was no $14 million merchandise revenue share. There was no individualized agreement between Shedeur Sanders and the Cleveland Browns for jersey sales. The reason none of that exists is structural. NFL rookie contracts are governed by the collective bargaining agreement, and that agreement is ironclad. The CBA dictates the slotted pay scale for every draft pick, the permissible bonuses, and the boundaries of what can be negotiated into a rookie deal. There is no mechanism, no loophole, no creative workaround that would let a fifth-round pick negotiate a personalized merchandise revenue share with his franchise. None. Not for him. Not for the first overall pick. Not for anyone in the rookie class. The only jersey-related revenue NFL players see comes through the NFL Players Inc. licensing arm, which operates as a pooled royalty system based on group licensing across all players in the league. It is not a one-to-one percentage payout to individual players based on their own jersey sales. So even with Shedeur's jerseys flying off shelves, the actual revenue going directly to him from those specific Browns jersey sales was nothing close to the $14 million figure circulating online. The real empire behind the name. So if the prime equity story was fake, and the Cleveland Browns are not cutting Shedeur Sanders an 8-figure merchandise check, then where exactly is the real money coming from? Because make no mistake, there is a real money story here. It is just not where the rumor said it was. Shedeur Sanders is one of the first true case studies in modern football of an athlete whose personal brand was already a fully mature business before he ever entered the NFL. His financial situation does not work the way most rookies' financial situations work. His NFL salary is, almost shockingly, the smallest part of his income. The actual empire is built on something else entirely. Start with the Nike deal. While he was still in college, Shedeur became the first ever college football athlete to sign with Nike on a personal brand deal. That was a historic move. Nike does not give individual contracts to college football players. It signs schools. The fact that Shedeur cracked that wall and got his own personal Nike contract before even leaving Boulder was a statement about his cultural reach. And that deal did not vanish when he was drafted. It transitioned cleanly from college to the pros, with Nike happy to keep him as a face of their football marketing into his NFL career. Then there is Gatorade, the official sports drink of the NFL. the brand whose commercials defined the careers of players like Michael Jordan, Peyton Manning, and Serena Williams. Shedeur was signed to a Gatorade endorsement while still in college, putting him in the same advertising rotation as some of the biggest athletes on earth. That deal also continued into his rookie year. Add Beats by Dr. Add a list of national endorsement campaigns covering tech, apparel, food, and consumer products. Add the personal social media following, which dwarfs the followings of most NFL veterans. Add the ability to book his own podcast appearances, his own content series, his own brand activations. The infrastructure around him is built like a venture-backed company, not a rookie quarterback contract. That infrastructure is what produces the actual headline number people should be paying attention to. Industry estimates have suggested Shedeur's annual brand income between Nike, Gatorade, Beats, and his other deals comfortably clears the $5 to $8 million range per year in steady-state revenue. That is more than his entire 4-year rookie contract is worth in just a single year of off-field deals. So when people online were trying to figure out how Shedeur was making money during his rookie year, the answer was not a secret merchandise clause with the Browns. The answer was the brand empire that was already running before he ever stepped on the field in Cleveland. The brand empire that would have been making him money whether he had been drafted first overall or not at all. And this is the part that turns the entire story on its head, because the framing in the title that Shedeur Sanders is signing into some shocking new deal that takes him out of the NFL economic system is true in spirit, even if it is not literally true in fact. He is not leaving the NFL. He is still a Cleveland Browns quarterback, but his actual financial life is divorced from the NFL contract structure in a way that no quarterback in football history has ever fully been before. If the Browns cut him tomorrow, his Nike check still clears, his Gatorade campaign still runs, his social media income still flows, his personal brand still operates as its own business entity. The NFL salary is, in his case, the smallest revenue stream in a much larger personal enterprise. That is the dynamic NFL teams may not have fully priced in yet, because in a traditional model, a 5th-round rookie quarterback would have to be desperate to make the team. He would be playing for survival. Every preseason snap would matter. Every meeting room moment would be life or death. That is the leverage NFL front offices have always counted on with late-round picks. Shedeur does not operate inside that leverage structure the same way. He is going to compete. He is going to want to play. By all accounts, his work ethic and his desire to prove the league wrong have been genuine throughout his rookie year. But the financial pressure that the league traditionally uses to motivate 5th-rounders is just not there for him in the same way. He is wealthy independent of his football contract. That changes the dynamic between player and team in ways the league has not had to deal with before. And that is the actual story underneath all the noise. Forget the prime equity rumor. Forget the $14 million merchandise check. Forget the wild claims circulating on social media about Shedeur leaving the NFL. The real headline is more interesting and more important than any of those things. Shedeur Sanders is the first quarterback to enter the NFL where the contract he signed with his team is not the most valuable contract in his portfolio, where his personal brand income out-earns his football salary by a factor of 5 or 6 to 1, where the league's traditional financial leverage over rookies basically does not apply to him. That is the deal. That is what is shocking. Not a secret merchandise clause, not a fake equity arrangement, a whole new model for what it looks like to be an NFL player when your business existed before your draft pick did. And whether the league wants to admit it or not, Shedeur Sanders is just the first one through that door. There will be more, and the NFL is going to have to figure out how to deal with all of them.